Almost every single hero inside Marvel Rivals has some type of passive ability that works without you having to activate anything. There's so many in this game now, but have you ever wondered what would happen if we put all of these passive abilities together for one single hero? How OP would that actually be? Well, in this video we're going to show you exactly that, because we have Steve. Steve is our hero for this video, and Steve is going to get all of these passive abilities and we're going to show you how they actually work together. Now, to start off with, we need to give Steve some basic abilities, because otherwise he's not going to be able to do anything at all. So first up, he's going to be able to punch. Now, every hero in this game has a melee attack, so Steve has to be able to punch. He's got a left and right combo. Then when it comes to the jumping, every single hero inside Marvel Rivals, even Adam Warlock, is able to jump in this game, and it's a single jump. Then he's going to be a duelist, because let's be honest, the Marvel Rival devs, if they're going to add Steve into the game, he's most likely going to be a duelist. And finally, he's going to have 250 base HP, because that is a squishy character and Steve looks quite squishy. So for all of these passive abilities, we've put them into categories, because some of them are repeated, some of them are very similar, and some of them just kind of make sense to go together in each of these categories so you can understand exactly what's going on. So first of all, we've got movement, and when it comes to movement, it's pretty safe to say Steve can run on walls. Now, there's so many heroes in this game that can run on walls, different variations of it, but essentially Steve can run on walls in any direction he wants, and that is pretty straightforward. Then he's also able to hover, so as you can see, Hela can hover, Rocket can hover, and also Magneto can hover as well, which basically he's able to kind of float in the air for a short amount of time. Also Namor can hover too, so I'm just going to throw that in there. And then he's also able to fly, because that is Angela's passive ability. She's able just to fly around completely and build up her attack charge, which we'll get on into in just a moment. And then he's also able to skate as well. So if that wasn't enough, if he wasn't able just to kind of fly around freely, then he can also skate, and he enhances his jump by skating. So essentially he can run on walls, he can glide, he can fly, and he can skate, which makes him completely broken in terms of movement mechanics, other than being able to like maybe web sling or something like that. But I suppose if he can fly, it doesn't really matter anyway. So speaking of flying around and building up charge, you can build up charge in many other ways granted by some of the other heroes. So you can fly around and build up charge. You can also deal damage and build up your charge. So as you can see, Wolverine's Berserker Rage is in there as well. So as you deal damage slowly over time, just punching enemies away, you're going to be dealing more damage as you do that. And then also you're building up your attack charge to then get into the kind of damage state, if you want to call it. Now, you can fly around and build up this charge. Dealing damage, like I said, builds up the charge. This gives you an initial first haymaker punch, which is essentially what you'd get with Angela when she is able to deal more damage with her attack. And then you get into some rapid fast punches as well, which is similar to Wolverine's Berserker Rage. And this lasts the whole entire time whilst you're in an overshield state, and this caps off at 950 HP. And this lasts a couple of seconds, of course, because that's how long you get it for with Mr. Fantastic, just to make him not completely broken. That kind of makes sense. Now, if that amount of overshield wasn't really enough for Steve, then even if you're not attacking the enemy all the time constantly, if you're killing enemies, so let's say you just finish them off with your teammate doing most of the damage, you get a bit of overshield from that, of course, why not? And then also, if you deal damage, maybe let's say 1 or 2 strikes of damage to the enemy, then you'll also gain some overshield from that as well. And that's thanks to Iron Fist and Magic, and this caps off at 400 HP if you haven't already entered the 950 HP state already, that is. Now let's talk about Steve's vision. Steve looks like a normal guy that can see normally. Well, you'd be wrong. Essentially, Steve can see through walls within a certain radius. So within that radius, he can completely see through walls, and he will be able to see invisible players as well. Now, if he can't see you, he will be able to sense you with a spider sense. So regardless, he will be aware that you're there. And then once he is aware, if he kind of looks at you and has his crosshairs on you for, let's say, about a second or so, he then builds up his haymaker punch with his attack charge, essentially allowing him to do more damage. So that is how his vision works. So it's pretty OP to say the least. Now let's talk about Steve Force. This is modeled off of Thor Force, of course. Try not to say that so fast. And Steve Force gives him 3 charges, which allows him to throw 3 rocks, 3 throwable rocks that landed at enemies, gives him 1 Steve Force back, right? So if you land it, it gives you a Steve Force back, which is part of the ceaseless charge that you get with Winter Soldier, but also very similar to what you get with Thor Force anyway. And then landing punches also restores your Steve Force with your basic attack, so you always get this back pretty much all the time, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And if an enemy is killed with a rock throw, an explosion will take place on the enemy death, dealing damage to enemies nearby. This is kind of similar to what Hela has when she's able to kill an enemy at distance, and then it kind of explodes in that radius. Now, each rock, after it's thrown and hit an enemy, it lands on the ground and attacks the enemies automatically for 2 seconds. And that is part of the Flora Colossus with Groot's walls and him enabling it by just dealing damage to the enemy. So overall, this is pretty broken, and you're pretty much always going to get back your Steve Force almost guaranteed all the time, and it just gives him a ranged attack because I think that's what he was missing. Let's talk about Steve's healing now, because all that overshield's not quite enough to keep him alive. He needs that little bit extra to keep him alive just a little bit longer because he wants to be absolutely broken. So when it comes to his movement boost, which he grants when he doesn't take any damage, he's able to move around a little bit quicker, and this obviously stacks on top of his flying ability and his skating ability and everything else that he's got as well. And this allows him to stand still as well if he wants to do that, and he can go completely invisible. Whilst he's in the invisible state, he can heal himself, of course, why not? And every attack Steve does with the Steve Force or otherwise, he's going to be restoring his health anyway. So every time he hits an enemy, not only is he going to be getting overshield, but he's also going to be healing himself too. So, I mean, just keep that in mind as we're going through this. Now, if you do manage to get Steve to 0 HP, then he's got the regenerative healing factor, which allows him to bring his HP back up with some overshields. And if you manage to take that away as well, then he's also able to revive himself at least once in life, or with his cooldowns, of course. So he can bring himself back to life, essentially, once you do get him down to 0 HP. Now, the only con to his healing at the moment is that if you don't use his Haymaker Punch when it's charged up, then you are cursed with anti-heal. So you do need to keep that in mind. Your teammates will not be able to heal you, or you won't be able to heal yourself at all if you don't use your Haymaker Punch. So make sure you use it so that you get the maximum healing possible. Now let's talk about the additional abilities, the ones that don't really fit into categories here. So Panther's Cunning allows him to deal more damage when he's at low HP. So already if he builds up his charge meter and then attacks you, and then he's got the extra HP and the extra overshields, then if he is at low HP at any point in time, then he's going to be dealing more damage. So just keep that in mind. Try not to get him to low HP, I guess. And then when it comes to the headshot damage to Steve, if you try and hit him in the head, well, it's a 50% headshot damage reduction, so you're going to need to hit him a good few times before you get him to 0 HP. And then last but not least, you cannot CC control him. You can't move him anywhere. You can't actually move this hero and throw him off the map or anything like that. So all of these things combined together make Steve pretty damn broken, and basically he's unkillable for the most part. His damage output is actually not that great, and it always relies on him building up his charge meter. So as long as you kill him like pretty much instantly, then I think you'll be good to go. Most of his attacks are in melee range, so just try and stay away from his melee range essentially. But then again, he can fly around and basically not be hit entirely because his movement is incredible. So as long as you stay away from him for the most part and you are shooting him at range, then I think you should be okay to almost kill him if everyone team fires him essentially. So that is this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll be making way more Marvel Rivals content, and thank you very much for watching.